That's right. That's where we're at. It's 12 minutes after 3 o'clock. Our guest is Sam Clovis. How you doing, Sam?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm still taking in air, so casting the shadow and all that stuff. So, that's all good. How about you, buddy? How's your health?
Well, I'm doing great. And I'm doing better. And I think that get stronger every day and do the best I can. I put a lot of it in the hands of God, and so far He's picked me up. I am living, walking proof of the power of prayer, and I just am so humble about how far I've come since 2.5 years ago when I got sick. So it's been quite an adventure.
What was your illness 2.5 years ago?
Well, I had a series of infections that ended up manifesting itself in a abscess in my spine that had to be operated on, and a laminectomy, which is laying open of the spine. I had 3 vertebrae that had to be opened and then debrided because of the infection, and then a very, very strong series of antibiotics that kind of wrecked my innards from the, because it not only killed all the bad stuff, it killed the good stuff too. So I battled that, and then of course I was paralyzed from the chest down for about a year, and then I got feeling in my feet, and then feeling in my legs, and after about another year, I was able to walk with a walker, and I'm still making progress, getting stronger, and my mobility has improved along the way. So it has been a very long, hard pull, but it's I'm doing well.
Sam Clovis served in, oh my God, the Trump administration, so he should be canceled immediately, right? Let's get the thought police and the speech control people from the Biden administration on the scene. The only
I need to put after my name that instead of all of my degrees, I need to put out there racist, homophobe, misogynist,
oppressor,
insurrection, terrorist.
Insurrection terrorist. I like that one. I like that one.
There you go.
Oh yeah, Washington's bracing for a group of conservative people who think that the people who entered the Capitol building, and I was not a supporter of the people who did what they did, but the punishment has been grotesque. I mean, the Washington bureaucracy, the legal bureaucracy, in I've started to refer to Joe Biden not as President Biden, but as Joe Biden, communist surrender monkey. But we'll talk about Afghanistan a little bit later on.
Yeah.
So, but in the meantime, in the interim, we can note that the penalties for being kind of stupid are way out of proportion with what actually happened. The idea that some guy with horns and a lot of tattoos was going to defeat democracy itself is absurd. The idea that the poor klutz from Des Moines who chased the cop up the stairs, not in any way to surrender, I don't think to endanger his life in any way, the idea that guy should remain in prison is ridiculous. I mean, these people are trying to make a point. If you oppose the Democratic establishment, this is what's going to happen to you. They're trying to strike fear into conservatives and to what they see as the core supporters, the core base of Donald Trump, which are a bunch of redneck yahoos screaming, because there is no such thing as an intellectual position on conservatism in anything at all. You know that, don't you, Sam?
Well, yeah, I would take exception to that, but the intellectual underpinnings of what drives the Democrats is pure lust for power.
Oh, it is.
And wealth. And I don't think that there's any question about that. The worst part of it is that they have what have been called the useless idiots out there, that useful idiots make no mistake. I was watching a special last night on PBS here in and it was excellent. It was well produced and everything. Provided a lot of the different angles on the Russian Revolution, and it talked very dramatically about a lot of those the aspects of what happened in Russia in 1917, and I thought one of the things that they talked about was the communist government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, communism is an economic system, and in order to have a communist economic system, you must have an authoritarian government.
Of course.
And that is what we are headed for. This mandate, this vaccine mandate that Biden has rolled out is unconscionable to me. I cannot fathom where he or anyone working for him would have the temerity to say that they're justified in doing this. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the president this kind of authority at all. And I just really, I'm stunned by it. And there are a lot of dimensions to that, and I hope we have a chance to discuss that a bit more.
Well, I hope so as well. Most people who know will tell you that the Biden administration is guilty of the worst kind of overreach, especially in the vaccination push that he's on now. It will not survive a court challenge, even at the appellate level, and it's a sure loser at the Supreme Court level, and Biden knows that. What I'm really waiting is for the other shoe to drop, Sam. I'm waiting to hear that at the end of a 6-month investigation, that Biden will try to pack the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is just wrong. I mean, 20 years ago, it was a bastion of brilliance. These were practically spiritual people, and their rulings were handed down by Moses coming out of the bush. I mean, for God's sake. But now all of a sudden,
I think it's interesting that I think that even some of the liberal judges on the Supreme Court are not in favor of that, because what it will do, it will show that the Supreme Court has been politicized far beyond where it is already. And that anything that comes from the Supreme Court will be seriously diluted in the eyes of the American people. Now, that has been written about by one of the liberal judges on the court, and I think that individual is absolutely right. Now, I'm hoping against hope, and that Biden will wise up and not try to do that. And besides that, it needs the consent of Congress to do that. Now, that means he has to have control of both houses to push that through. And I don't think there are going to be a full set of Democrats in the Senate that will go along with it. I think that the House might vote all, in lockstep, but I don't know that the Senate would.
I wonder how quickly we can get to 2020 in the elections. That's what's happening here. They have this majority, and I will have to, and I know you're going to defend Donald Trump, but if he would have just shut up, we'd still have one of those seats in Georgia, maybe both of them, because those two guys were not real popular in Georgia. But now one of the reddest states in the union has 2 Democratic senators, U.S. senators, which is a tragedy.
Well, but, hopefully in 2022 we'll be able to tip a little bit more our way and along that line. And I agree, the social walkers running down there, and we'll see how that goes. But because one of those seats it has to be defended here in 2022, and so I think that we're looking at circumstances where they may try to go through this and say, yes, they want to improve, and all of the rationale that the Biden administration will come up with. The problem is that most Americans out there won't understand the fact that what the impact or the long-term ramifications of court packing would be. And I don't, because we just don't have the civics education that we would have had 20 years ago or 40 years ago. Because even in FDR's time, the packing of the court would have seriously damaged the credibility of the Supreme Court, and FDR knew it. It was just the idea that he wanted to threaten there. And it was interesting, in the 1937 case on minimum wage, it was Owen Roberts, a person named by the name of Roberts, who flipped his vote in that court that then tipped the court the other direction for FDR. So that was, a small snippet of history there. It just is ironic that Roberts in 37 and then John Roberts, the appointment of George W. Bush as the chief justice.
Is Roberts?
Now Roberts has been a weather vane in the Supreme Court today.
Is Roberts the one that said I voted or a stitch in time to save the nine? I think he said he changed his vote in order to.
Roberts, that's right.
Yeah. He changed his vote because he was concerned that well, as you just said, that the Supreme Court would lose all credibility if Roosevelt or anybody was allowed to pack the court. Of course, Biden and this crew, they're fanatics. I mean, they're ideological fanatics. And it's almost sad to see Joe Biden, who seems to be confused most of the time. I think he really should be examined for dementia. And you and I are older men as well. Maybe we're going to have to be examined one of these days. But Biden clearly needs some sort of medical test, and we need to know the results of those tests because he's just lost most of the time.
I wonder who's running, who's the puppet master. And I think one of the things that just briefly on the dementia aspect is that because of his personality and his ego, because he is having trouble with his mental faculties, a lot of times people in those circumstances are very truculent. They fight, they have meltdowns, they push back extremely hard, they have temper tantrums, and I think that is certainly would get Joe Biden to a T as far as I can observe.
I think you're right. He was never, Joe Biden was criticized as being too conservative during the Democratic nomination process. Oh my God, he said he could work with James Eastland of Mississippi. Like that was a crime. Eastland was a very conservative man and probably a racist, but he was a U.S. senator. He had to be dealt with. Biden dealt with him. End of story. But even the tinge of having ever cooperated with a conservative in your life in today's Democratic Party is grounds to have you, dismissed, I guess.
Well, it's hard to find any place there. I keep looking at all of the things that people have come to me and they want me to support them, and I say they want to work across the aisle and do all that. I don't want to work across the aisle. The Democrats offer me nothing that I'm interested in, and I don't care what it takes. We should cooperate with them, and we should inhibit their ability to do anything at every turn. We ought to be procedurally out there battling them at every corner of those grandiose buildings in Washington, D.C. that have their palatial offices. I'm sure you've been in to visit some of our representatives and see how they live. And my word, it's incredible. And I guess it comes with it's okay. I guess it comes with the fact that they've been elected and we spent the money on those buildings. But I think a lot of times that goes to their head. They get used to people picking up their laundry for them.
Sam Clovis is our guest. I want to ask you a quick question on on the air. You're a friend of Steve King's, former Congressman Steve King.
Yes, I am. Very close friend.
And he was going to write a book. He told me about it shortly after after the vote went to Randy Feenstra. Did you ever hear any more on Congressman King's book? I haven't spoken to him in months.
So quite a bit. The book is, in fact, it's about to come out.
Oh, okay.
I would say, I'm not exactly sure, but I would say within the next 90 days that book will be out.
I suppose it's about his time in Congress. I mean, it's a personal biography, I'm sure.
Yes, and I've had a chance to read through it, and I don't think I'm revealing anything. I think it is typical of Steve King, and I think it is an excellent read.
What's the title? Do you know? Can you tell us, or?
I can't remember exactly. So rather than guess, I'm not going to. But,
okay.
It is. I don't think it'll be a surprise to anybody. And honestly, Mike, I can't remember the title.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right. I mean, he told me a long time ago. Again, the last time I spoke to him, probably that he was going to write this book. And then when he got it done, and it was sure, because he had some pushback from publishers. I mean, liberals were trying to even prevent him from speaking in that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, the liberal assault on free speech has got to be confronted. The liberal idea, the liberal assault on a free and open exchange of ideas has to be confronted, and their excuses must be dismissed because that's what they are. It's just excuses. Our feelings are going to be hurt. Oh my God, we must build this loving society. What a bunch of crap. It's so ideological.
It's very interesting you bring that up because today I was asked to look at a particular website for a person that's decided to run for governor in a state near us, and I looked at it, Democrat, individual's Democrat, and I went through there and all of the current political buzzwords and all the current political virtue signals were throughout that entire webpage, and I about threw up. I couldn't believe it. It was just so sopping wet and so transparent. And I looked at that and I couldn't hardly contain myself. And I was able to write a very quick note tonight to a colleague of mine about what I saw. And it was very evident that this was virtue signaling that time.
Well, yeah. Well, anytime you want to hear a lot of excessive heavy breathing and virtue signaling, just tune in MSNBC. It's always there. It's always
there. I like that. Heavy breathing and virtue signaling. That's something that ought to be used in the same sentence.
Oh, absolutely.
It ought to be used.
Heavy breathing and virtue signaling. It just goes hand in hand. Anyway, Sam Clovis is our guest. Sam, we need to take a news break.
fair elections, if we have fair elections, then I think we stand a pretty good chance of winning, and there will be an ebb and flow. There always is. There is an ebb and flow in American politics, and unfortunately, we get the government we deserve, and I think that's the one thing I keep coming back to, the idea that strikes me, that we have a small minority, not even a sizable minority, but a small minority of people in this country who are orchestrating this charade that we have here and trying to create this chaos. I call it confusion. I think your term chaos may be better because it's stronger, but I think it's the confusion that these people want to have happen, and therefore, so where do you turn? You can't turn to the institutions that you normally would. You can't turn to the community institutions. You can't turn to civic organizations. So the only place you have left to go is the government. And it's not the state government, it's the national government, because it's all-knowing, all-seeing, all aspects of this. And they talked about when the Russians in 1917 through 24, when Lenin was still alive, when they went to the collective farms, it was a total disaster. And I think that's what we're going to see happen again, is that this experiment will fail. It's just a matter of who's in charge. And that's what the fighting will be about. It'll be about who's in charge. And right now, conservatives are on the outside looking in.
You know, there are videos and recordings from the late 60s, early 70s of the kulaks. So the kulaks were peasant farmers in the Ukraine and the old Soviet Union. Robert Conquest, by the way, is a resource that if you're interested in the Stalinist period and why the United States fought communism and totalitarianism, you should read Robert Conquest. He is a great author and chronicler of that period. But there are still video extant of some of the survivors of the Stalinist era. And one man in particular, I remember, he looked like a typical Russian of the time, a big brushy mustache. He was probably 70 years old in 1970. But he said, we had farmed on this land for years. It was only like a 10-acre plot. They were subsistence farmers, essentially. And they had a few animals, and they grew a few crops, and maybe they sold some eggs or something at a farmer's market. Well, some people they'd never seen before, dressed in uniform, some sort of uniform, not a military uniform, but a uniform with a red star on their cap, showed up at their farm and said, now this land and your animals belong to the state, and you work for the state. And they, even after the many, many years, the look of astonishment on this man's face was still with him. We had no, they had, this was a primitive time, of course, when there was no such thing as mass communication as we know it now. There was no idea that something that happened in Moscow that would change their lives to this extent. But that in fact is what happened. He as a young man was just assigned to a factory in a large city. There was no, he'd been on a farm his whole life. And he was just assigned arbitrarily, apparently, because he was a young, strong man, to work in a factory in a larger city, some distance from what had been his family home. Mm-hmm. And there's no doubt in my mind that if we allow this chaos and if we allow these people to destroy individual identity and national identity, that we'll be in a place, we'll be in a place where that could happen again. I don't doubt it. I know some people think that I can't be right on this, but the idea that American prosperity just goes on and on and on is false. It's just completely false. We have
just take a look at where we are. I think that it's we're looking at just in the space of the time that Joe Biden has been president, and think about the continued profligate spending that we have, and think about the inflation that we're at 8.5%. We could be looking at interest rates don't trust anything that they do. And when that happens, there is a huge price to pay for that down the road, and that price that we pay is the fact that we then begin to lose our liberties, and we start then to factionalize even more than we are today. And if you think the divides are bad now, just wait. Let this continue, and let's see where the divides go.
Sam Clovis has been our guest. Thank you so much, Sam.
All right, we'll talk to you again next week, Mike.
Yes,
Thank
you will.
very much.
Yes, you will. And thank you again. This is AM 1400 KVFD. It's 3:58.
Dwayne Murley. December 4th was down 4.25. March 4th down 4.5, 5.22. November beans down 1 3/4 to 12.84.